now we are live, and now we can begin. Or if we're not live, we're going to be live in a minute. So I'm going to go back to sharing our screen.
Let's just say the meaning is, Mom, come over here.
Okay.
What's this doing?
All right, everybody, let's begin with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay. Hello, Carrie. How are you?
Hi.
So I actually just have one text today. So we'll probably be done at 12:15, right?
All right, 12:15.
Yeah.
Just one simple text from the Torah. Prepared the discussion, Rabbi Feigelson from IJS, and it is on Deuteronomy 22:1-3, Parshat Ki Teitzei. What do we know about Ki Teitzei? Ki Teitzei is a parsha that is overflowing, depending upon how you count, maybe 74 different mitzvot that Moshe packs into this one parsha. So there are lots of things to talk about. Given that it is so close to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I thought we would talk, I think we did 2 weeks ago. No, I did in my Torah learning this past Shabbos morning for the handful of people that came at 9:15. We also studied a text in preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This one is really beautifully designed to help us in this month of Elul prepare for the work that we need to be doing now and on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So the verses from the Torah, Leora, would you need me to make it bigger? You're muted, by the way, but I will make it bigger for you. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
לא תראה את שור אחיך. Oops, what happened? I
had a pop-up come on.
Oh, it's yours, okay. לא תראה את שור אחיך או את שיו נידחים והתעלמת מהם, השב תשיבם לאחיך. ואם לא קרוב אחיך אליך ולא ידעתו, ואספתו, should be אספתם, אל תוך ביתך והיה עמך, עד דרשה אחיך אותו והשבת לו. וכן תעשה לחמור, וכן תעשה לשמלתו, וכן תעשה לכל אבדת אחיך, אשר תאבד ממנה ומצאת לא תוכל להתעלם.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. It's so beautiful to be able to hear somebody who is native to be able to read with the understanding of what's going on. Yes, Leora.
I have a comment just by reading that because for some reason I don't remember seeing much in the Torah in the script that they're talking about brothers that don't know each other or not close to each other. And that's interesting. That's coming here.
Yeah.
George, did you want to respond to Leora's comment?
Well, just to that, I got a few other comments, but brothers, it probably mean Israelites. So it may not mean non-Jews. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the rabbis in the Talmud.
It doesn't say anashim. It says,
achicha.
Yeah.
But then again, it also, we learned in the very beginning of Breshit that achicha represents all of humanity. So we're not going to get into how the rabbis understood who is implicated in this verse. Let's take a look at the English quickly, just so that we can make sure that we know what we're talking about. This is the famous, one of the more famous verses that speaks to our obligation to take care of others. If you see your fellow Israelites' ox or sheep straying, do not ignore it, but be sure to take it back to its owner. Now, the Hebrew does not say your fellow Israelite. All it says is achicha, which is the conversation that Leora and George we're just having
Yeah.
with one another. If they do not live near you, or if you do not know who owns it, take it home with you and keep it until they come looking for it. We're going to speak about that a little bit later, what that means, come looking for it. Then give it back. Do the same if you find their donkey or cloak or anything else they have lost. Do not ignore it. So that's the verse that we're looking at, the verses that we're looking at. And in other places in the Torah, we have, you'd have the same mitzvah with an enemy. That's not what this one is talking about. This one is talking about for your achicha. And who is your achicha? Whether it's a fellow Jew or whether it is your community. It doesn't matter as much to where we're going with our discussion today. George.
Yeah, well, the items they're talking about, it's one thing, somebody leaves a coat, you can put it in your closet. How about, you know, a living animal? You know, you got to feed it, take care of it. If you don't take care of it properly, you got all those issues, you know. If you damage it and so on and so forth.
Okay, and is there a question, or is that just a statement to say, wow, this is a remarkable statement of neighborly responsibility?
Well, it puts a different burden on the person who finds it. In other words, it may cost more to feed this donkey than the value. You know, after a while, you know, what's the period of time, you know, that you have to hold this?
Well, it seems like until they come looking for it.
Well, that could be
all right,
20 years, you know.
Yeah, I see. Okay, Carrie, Marilyn, and Ziggy.
Yeah.
And Neil.
And Neil. Oh, sorry,
Hi.
Neil. I missed you.
No, I'm back in the background, not to worry.
I understand the time and all like that, but I truly think it's take care of this animal because they need this animal. And you're, like you said, doing the neighborly thing. No matter how long it takes, it's our responsibility to take care of each other. So taking care of each other, you're taking care of each other's items that are living.
Right. Okay, Marilyn.
I was just going to also say that it refers to the responsibility that we have. We can't ignore when we see somebody else's belonging or belongings, or even take it a step further, just even the people themselves. I think it can be expanded to say that we have responsibility with all living things, and that life is precious, and we have a responsibility to maintain that.
Good. Where does this play out? And I'm going to get to you, Ziggy and Neil, but where do you think today in our modern 21st century society, where do we experience, where would you find yourself being able to fulfill this mitzvah?
Are you speaking to me or just in general?
Everybody,
Oh.
everybody. Lauren?
Well, I came home one day and there were two little dogs on my front porch. I didn't know whose dogs they were. So of course I took them in, and I put up signs around the neighborhood because they look well cared for. They weren't like stray dogs. And it turned out that the gardener had come and left the gate open, and the neighbors were so appreciative that I had taken in their dogs that, you know, and then you have these animal rescues. Terry Track. So Terry Track takes in every stray dog, animal, so that's where it comes into play. You know, if you find a stray dog or a stray cat, or as long as you know they've been, I don't know if I would take in a wild dog, but
I think we have an opportunity really almost in everyday life, whether you find someone's wallet or telephone or anything like that.
Good. Excellent. Okay. Beautiful.
I'm going to ask another question.
Wait, before Lauren, are you okay with, because I called on Ziggy and Neil, and then you're going to go next.
Okay.
My point was similar to Leora's. I think this goes to because we humans, we are who we are, we do have Yetzer Hara behind our back all the time. So I think this is to tell us that, you can always say, well, I found this donkey, I don't know who it belongs to. I tried to found this wallet. I found all this. I don't know who it belongs to. I'm just going to have to keep it. And I think that's where it goes to remind us that, when you find something that doesn't belong to you, you need to do your best effort to find who it belongs to, and just publicize it and try to find out from your neighborhood or your friends or neighbors who it belongs to, and return it to its proper owner. So that's the way I read it.
Great, excellent. Neil.
Well, it's kind of a combination of everybody's comments. It almost sounds like the beginning of a Mishnah, where the question comes, what happens if the animal dies while you got it in your possession? Or is it only have any obligation to you if you keep it for 2 months or 4 months? I mean, there's so many, it begs so many questions that it's not a simple discussion.
No, and in fact, what Neil is pointing out, which I think, George, you were alluding to as well in your comment, is from the very basic verses in this Torah portion, specifically these verses here, there are pages and pages of Talmudic tractates that deal with all of the manifestations of the implications of the questions around how do we fulfill this mitzvah? Because if we look at the Torah as presenting to humanity, to Jews in particular, some very broad, general principles of how we need to do God's will, be partners with God in this world, act with the principle of Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha in our minds. The Talmud expands that and gives us the practical, how do we do this, with every possible scenario open to the rabbis to try to solve the problems. And that's exactly what happens. So we could, spend a lifetime studying all of the halachic implications of this one verse, but we're not going to do that. That's not our goal. Lauren.
So where did the little saying, finders, keepers, losers, weepers come into, I taught, I've mentioned before, I taught first grade, and there were things that were dropping all the time on the floor. And, one kid would pick it up and say it was theirs. Another kid would pick it up and say it was theirs. And, you had to, finders, keepers, losers, weepers. And, no, it wasn't that, it belonged to somebody. So where did that come into play?
So I would say that's probably one of the many significant differences between Jewish jurisprudence and American law. In Judaism, the primary motivation for the legal work is what is a person's obligations and responsibilities to each other, to the community. And in America, I think our law is based upon what is my right. And so when you think about the distinction, the differences between rights versus obligations, that's, I think, the difference between returning one's lost item and saying finders keepers.
Regardless of how the other person who lost it felt, but, as a teacher, you always try to make the child feel for the other child who lost something. So, and go back to your obligation to, you're not in a world all by yourself, so.
Yes. I'm glad Ellen, if you look at the chat, remembers that when I taught my Mishnah class many, many years ago. Okay, so what I want to do, George, yes?
Yeah, I used to play golf, and there are some rules, so to speak, not legal, but if you found a golf ball, you could keep it. If you found a club that somebody lost, you would turn that in, even though they were both so-called lost. You didn't say who lost this golf ball and go, searching, because it was a small item. That's like understood.
so there's a principle, and then I see Rachel's hand and
Yeah.
Neil's hand, and then after that, we're really going to move forward.
Okay.
We're not going to end class at 12:15, as I suspected, which I wouldn't want to end class at 12:15, by the way. So,
19,
there's-
you'll be late.
that's true. There's a principle in the Talmud, George, that's called Yeush, and Yeush means that we have an obligation to return something if we believe that the person who lost it is feeling, how do I translate Yeush into English? Is feeling, oh God, I can't think of the English word. They're feeling anguish that they lost this object, and they will lose sleep over the fact that they can't get it back.
Yeah.
As opposed to if people lose something and they know that they've given up all possible hope that they're going to return it, then that's the kind of thing that you don't have to return. So a golf ball on a golf course is something that doesn't lead to Yeush,
Yeah.
to this feeling like, oh my God, I'm not going to live unless I got that golf ball back.
Yeah.
Not so much a club. And therefore, you have the obligation to return the club. You don't have the obligation in Jewish law
Yeah.
to return the ball. Rachel, Neil, and Marilyn.
Thanks, Rabbi Shalom. I actually have a couple of questions more than any comments. And as always, I know that you have a particular direction you're going. So if it's out of scope, we can take it offline. But the first question, I'm curious in the language of this saying, if you see your fellow Israelite, I know there was allusion to, the Hebrew and et cetera, but I mean more specifically, like, is the concern that it's someone within your, family, whether, that's of course not just literal blood, but you know what I mean? Like that you think of in a specific way, or it is expansive to just any human being. So I'm curious about that in reading and thinking about the language of it. And then second to that, just, I guess, like, and you kind of just touched on it right now. I was curious about, like, what is it about the returning? I was trying to read beyond the literal of the ox and the sheep. And I was like, I don't know what the context of what those are in that civilization and time meant. Obviously, yes, livelihood in one sense, but is there more to it? And thus the kinds of things that matter to take that level of care. So
Yes.
anyway.
Okay. Two really good questions. We're not going to discuss either of them, not because I don't think they're really good questions, because it does take us off. The first question is a debate in the halakhic literature as to what achicha means. This translation is a very generous translation when it says, or I should say, a very particular translation when it says Israelite ox, generous to the narrowest reading of achicha, your brother. There are other translations and other halachic beliefs that this extends far more to your closest inner circle of Jews. To the second question, really good, but it's a whole class in and of itself with regard to returning lost items. And it takes us away from where I want to go, which is really personalizing this whole thing in preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Marilyn, yes.
I don't know if you want to go here, but it can be expanded to the situation in Afghanistan about how, as Americans, people have, they've helped us, they've risked their lives to help us, and they're living in anguish. And it's our responsibility to give them their humanity back.
Very, very interesting. A fascinating read on how we could expand the understanding of what it means to give something back that has been lost, especially if we are the ones who gave it to them in the first place. I remember Yeush, the English word is despair. when you still feel despair that you haven't given up hope for that item to be returned to you, we, the finder, has an obligation. But if you believe the person has given up hope that they're ever going to get it back, then you don't have the obligation. But let's turn it inward. Let's go to, so in other words, yes, Marilyn, I think it's a great read. And we can certainly, see how this verse can apply to those kinds of responsibilities. I'm going to back to sharing the screen, and we're going to take a look at Rev Nachman of Breslov, his understanding of this verse in preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Know that we must travel to the tzaddik to retrace our steps to retrieve that which we have lost. So we're going to look at a few things in this passage of his. The first one is, why do we need to go to a tzaddik, a righteous person, to help us retrieve what has been lost? We're just going to put that out here for a minute. He does something fascinating here. This is a midrash that I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with. Before we come into the world, we are taught and shown everything that we need to do, to labor at, to achieve in this world. The shape and content of our service of the divine. In other words, our purpose and mission here in this world. Once we are out in the world, we are made to forget it, as our rabbis teach. So are you familiar with this midrash? Right, that in the womb, the angel teaches us everything past, present, and future. And then right before we come out into the world, as Maxine just demonstrated with her finger on her lip, the angel touches us here and we forget everything. So in other words, what Rabbi Nachman is saying here is that at some point in our existence as a soul, as a fetus in the womb, we haven't lost anything. We know everything. And then when we go out into the world, we immediately come into the world in what sense? Right? What is the sense in this passage that he's trying to convey to us? What have we lost? Ellen, you're muted.
Yeah, well, it's right in the next paragraph. We've lost our sense of purpose and our knowledge of humanity and our knowledge of God.
Good. Okay, so let's keep going. This forgetting is kind of a lost object. Thus, our rabbis called the person who forgets someone who has lost something, as they say, quick to hear, quick to lose. By the way, I have here's the footnotes, right? A fetus is taught the entire Torah. That's that one that we know. And in Pirkei Avot, while we have rendered as hear or lose, a more idiomatic expression, quick to comprehend, quick to forget. Okay, back up to Rabbi Nachman. So he continues, we must retrace our steps, returning to seek our lost object. But the lost object is with the tzaddik. Okay, actually, sorry, before I go there. So in the Torah, what was the lost object? Who lost the lost object?
Red fellow Israel.
Right.
Okay.
Humanity.
Exactly. So the lost object was something that somebody else lost, and it was a concrete thing that they lost. How is Reb Nachman reorienting the way in which we think about lost objects? Who lost what?
Going back to the fetus.
Oh, we
lost
fetus.
all knowledge.
Exactly. We are the ones who lost something. And here's the beautiful thing. It's in the very nature of what it means to be alive. In the very essence of to be a human being is to be born separate from that which is. It's somehow part of our true essence and our true core. As soon as we leave the womb and enter into the world, we have already separated from that which is the core of our very being. Now, from a psychological standpoint, right? From a Freudian standpoint, one could do a whole lot with this and think about how, you know, the child is constantly wanting to get back into the womb of the mother, right? Maybe not physically into the womb, but reclaim that safe space, that sense of what happened in the womb where everything was taken care of for you and you didn't have to struggle to survive. But we're not looking at it from a psychological standpoint here. We're looking at it from an emotional, really a spiritual standpoint. Marilyn, I think I saw your hand before.
Yes. When we're born, it's the beginning of free will. God gives us free will. So that at that point, that's the journey that we make in terms of drawing our own conclusions, be it right or wrong. So
Yeah,
that's
well, so that comment that you made is the argument for why God makes us forget everything before we come out into the world. Because if we knew everything, then we'd still be in Gan Eden. Then there'd be no humanity to our lives. There'd be no point in trying to, you know, live in this world as free people, because we wouldn't be. We would be bound by everything that we already know. Self-determination would already be taken care of.
Mhm.
Okay, so now I'm in this paragraph here. We must retrace our steps, returning to seek our lost object. Retrace our steps, returning to seek. What is it that we're returning to seek? What was given to us in the womb that we've lost?
Knowledge.
Knowledge, excellent. What else besides knowledge?
Purpose.
Purpose, very good.
sense
Which,
of utility.
good.
That
What
of human-
else? One more thing. Well, let me say this. Knowledge of what? Knowledge of who?
God.
Yeah, very good. Knowledge of God, right? Because we're exposed to God in this most intimate way in the womb, and then we're led to forget, and we have to spend our life trying to find our way back to knowing the divine. And in knowing the divine, ultimately knowing ourselves.
I was
Is
just,
that an easy journey to walk through, to go on? No. And that leads to, right, perhaps the first statement that he makes. Know that we must travel to the tzaddik to retrace our steps to retrieve that which we have lost. If we think about, right, in the very beginning when we first looked at this sentence, we're like, what do we need a tzaddik for? To go find a coat or a dog or a wallet. But now when we're not talking about a coat or a wallet or a dog, and we're talking about the very essence of who we are as human beings, then it makes sense to now say that we can't really do this all alone, that it helps to have somebody in our life as a spiritual master to help guide us on this process to truth. Lauren and then George.
no, I was going to say, we're searching for ourselves, or we're searching for God, as God is us, or we God. I mean, it's like,
We are not God. We are not God. But if we're created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God, and God has breathed into us a neshama,
right.
then
That's all.
we are searching for that inner hidden godliness within that we can bring forth out into the world.
But if we're not thinking, we're thinking people, so we think about God. If we don't have the capacity to think, it gets very confusing to me.
Well, let's go a little bit further. Hopefully, Lauren, as we go a little bit further, it will reveal itself a little bit more coherently. George?
Yeah, without commenting whether this is correct or incorrect.
Wait. Stop. What do you
The
mean?
rabbi was a Chassid, right? Hasidic rabbi. You know, where the concept is you go to your Rebbe, you know, to have things answered for you, you know, to help you.
Well, that's not what this is. That's not exactly what this is talking about. This is
No,
not
no.
like go to your Rebbe to get your things
Well, to a
answered.
tzaddik. Well, he's a tzaddik.
But even whatever, interchangeable, Rebbe, Tzaddik, this is really about going to your spiritual guide to help you in your journey to rediscover your truth.
Yeah, but does he refer to this as a person, a tzaddik, not just,
Yeah.
whatever, some,
No, he's speaking about an actual guide, an actual person.
yeah, like a Rebbe who you would go to get direction.
Yeah, not like, should I marry this person, or should I take this job here, or should I eat,
Yeah.
this, but on a much deeper level, who am I and how do I need to be in this world?
Okay. In the stock market, they call that talking your book. In other words, a stock you own, you say, buy this stock. Say I own it, hypothetically, I own Amazon stock, which I don't. You'd say, boy, go out and buy, investment advice, go out and buy Amazon. In other words, you're talking up, you or what you're doing. It doesn't make it right or wong,
Mhm.
but
Okay, good. Nice analogy.
yeah,
So we must retrace our steps, returning to seek our lost object, but the lost object is with the tzaddik. This is because the tzaddik searches after their own lost object until they find it, and once they find it, they return and search for others' lost objects until they find those lost objects. They do not stop until they find the lost objects of the entire world. So here he's helping us understand, why do we need to go to a tzaddik to help us on our own journey? And in your own words, what's the answer to that, to why we need a tzaddik to help us? What does the tzaddik have that we might not have?
Closer relationship with God.
Okay, how does the tzaddik have a closer relationship with God? What have they done?
He searches for his own lost.
Exactly. They've done the work already. In other words, they've achieved success. They understand what it means to search for the truth and find it. And so we want to seek out people who have been on such a journey. We want to seek out people, and not only that, who have been on such a journey for themselves, that then are overwhelmed by their responsibility they have to helping others along the way. That their journey that they sought wasn't just, to reach nirvana and then say, now to hell with humanity, I've achieved what I need to achieve in this world. But it's the whole reason why I achieved what I achieved is to then turn around and help others on their path.
They have to be the teacher.
Exactly. Exactly.
Somebody to lead by example.
Exactly.
So that would-
That's part of the truth he's found.
Another, very good, Paul. Beautiful. The truth that he has found is that he's here, or she's here, to lead others to help them find their truth. Lovely. Okay, good. Therefore, we must, by the way, are you enjoying this text? Isn't this a beautiful text? Or I shouldn't say, are you enjoying this text? Isn't it a beautiful text? Because that's a leading question. I should say, how do you find this text, and let you make the decision as to whether it's beautiful or not? Because you may say, no, this is ridiculous. It's not even clear to the shot. And what are you giving us this nourishkeit for? Which is okay. I'm happy with that feedback. Therefore, we must come to the wise person to request and to initially recognize our lost object, to return and to receive it from them. In other words, what he's saying here is fascinating. What is he saying in this first sentence of this last paragraph?
We must go to somebody. Not wait
Why?
for them to come to us.
Why do we have to go to somebody?
To let them know we lost this? Or look
Before, no, because that already assumes something, Maxine. What does it assume?
That they have
the
something,
other person found something.
something.
Maybe you said that. I think it assumes that we know that we've lost something. Like we know when we lost a dog and a wallet, but do we really understand that we've lost our purpose? Maybe yes, maybe no. It all depends. Some people walk in this world believing they have everything they need, and they're not out there trying to discover. And so you need your Rebbe, as George said. You need your spiritual guide to remind you that you're distant from that which is your possession. You've lost it, and you don't even realize that you've lost it. So we come to the wise person to request and to initially recognize our loss, to return to receive it from them. In many ways, I think about marriage, right? And oftentimes, right, not often, all the time, we should marry somebody who is that tzaddik for us, that can help us return that which we don't even know we've lost. Right? That to be in a relationship with an Ezer Kenegdo, with an equal counterpart, is that person becomes our guide in life to help us grow to be the kind of people that we need to be in this world. Neil and then Marilyn.
Question I have is this lost object. Do you have some sort of mark on it that helps you identify it? Or is there some?
So when you read the verse from the Torah in a pshat, in the, most simple version of what the Torah probably intends, then the Talmud says, yes, Neil, you need to have a clearly indication that it's yours. But when it comes to what we're talking about here, our soul, our purpose, our path, there is no clear marking of that. But in answer to your question, if you open up the Mishnah says that you have to return an item that clearly has some kind of demarcation that that the owner will be able to recognize is his or hers. And if there's no demarcation on it, then you don't have the obligation to return it.
But if if you encounter an experience, can that be your mark in your terms of your discussion?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think that's the only way in which we can understand it. 100%. Ellen.
Yeah, thanks. I'm struggling with how to ask the question because when you talk about Ezer Kenegdo in a previous class, you talked about how that person is an opponent or it's an opposite or somebody who challenges you. So, was that somebody we choose because we love them or we trust them? So when I would go to a teacher, it'd have to be somebody that I'd be willing to be vulnerable in front of to say, I don't know myself. And that who is generous enough to kindly oppose me and push me, but still not painfully, I hope. Although sometimes it is painful when you want to face the truth, because my basic point is, I know I don't always see myself the way others see me. And I don't always hear what people want me to hear because it's too hard to hear. So that's to be able to seek a teacher. And isn't that one of the first things in Pirkei about find yourself a teacher?
Yes. Rav uknelecha chaver.
So that's kind of your Musar thing, is you're continuously willing to search for that part of yourself you cannot see alone.
Correct. And it could be done. I gave the example of a spouse. If we marry properly, it could be, a therapist. It could be a best friend. It could be a study of Jewish, wisdom like Musar. It could be a child. It could be God. It could be the Torah, right? Or it could be, a Rebbe, a rabbi, it could be any of those things for sure. And the nature of that relationship, Ellen, is, I believe, exactly the way you just described it. One where you're able to be vulnerable, which means that there has to be trust established, and one where the person is going to challenge and push you to make you uncomfortable and maybe even cause a little bit of pain, because that is a significant way in which you can grow.
Rabbi,
Yeah, Paul.
to me, the striking phrase in that sentence is to return. Because what we have lost is our way to this divine source. And just like the ox or the donkey that has strayed, we have strayed. And what we need to do is get back on track. And that's the essence of Teshuvah, really, which ties into the holidays.
That's right. And then thank you. And I just want to go back because I was thinking about what Ellen said when she reminded us of Pirkei Avot. This is the passage that I taught this past Shabbat morning when it says, Oselecha Rav and Uknelecha Chaver. Does anybody know the last piece of that passage of Pirkei Avot? It says, very interesting. It says in the English, and judge everybody favorably.
Yeah.
Kol ha'adam lekaf zchut. Heve dan et kol ha'adam lekaf zchut. To judge every human being favorably. So in reality, and Paul, I don't know why what you said just made me think about this, every human being is potentially our teacher. That if we judge everybody favorably, what we're saying is that in every encounter I have with somebody, my equal, somebody greater than me, or somebody lesser than me, in the scope of power and authority, I can learn from that individual.
That's the definition of humility.
Exactly. And so who is my Rebbe? If we expand this passage out to the full extent of how it might be, the person who can teach me something about myself, something that I need to learn about how to be in relationship with other people and God.
In Musar terms, the other before me.
Exactly, which is every other before me, every single other. Okay, so where am I? But the tzaddik does not return the lost objects to its owner until they examine yidrashenu whether or not the seeker is a liar or a deceiver. This is what the Talmud means when it interprets the verse until they come looking for it, ad drosh, then give it back. Until you examine tidrosh your fellow to know that they are not deceitful. That goes back to I bolded ad drosh, right? Why does it need to say until they come looking for it? Why do you need to return it? Why can't you return it? If you know who lost it, why can't you just return it to that person? Why do you wait until somebody comes to you and says, I'm seeking this out? And then and only then do you return it, right? And he gives that answer in this verse. So I would be remiss to not share. Well, actually, let me pause for a second and just any other comments before I share with you two passages that I think Rabbi Feigelson adds to this discussion that are rich in his interpretation. Ziggy.
Yeah, I mean, this whole statement that to know that he's not deceitful, isn't it part of the journey that this person is on to find out, have the tzaddik help him find his way? You know? Well, how
if
he came to the tzaddik, why would he come to the tzaddik then?
I could only tell you from my personal experience, there have been many times where I have pushed back against my wife, Carolyn, when she points out something about me that I'm not ready to accept and see. So I am deceiving myself into believing something about me that's actually not true by denying her truth. When I can hear her truth and be able to say, wow, you caught me, you see me, right? And admit that to her, right? By adrosh, until I seek it out and I say, you're absolutely right. I was wrong. I was a schmuck. I was insensitive. I was whatever it was.
Perhaps it's because you got this input when you weren't looking for it and you weren't ready for it. I say, okay, stop drying my cup already. Enough is enough. But when you come to her and say, help me, I've got this issue here, let's work through it, that's another story if she offers and pushes back.
Well, maybe. Sometimes I can say I have this issue, but I don't really mean it, right? Sometimes I may be saying all the right words and doing everything that I should be doing, but in reality, I'm not open to hearing what it is that she has to say.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I mean, I'm personalizing it, but I think that generally speaks to all of our intimate relationships where we need those people to help us discover who we are. Other thoughts? Yeah, Carrie.
It's those people that are in our lives that we trust. And so that trust plays into this, because you don't want to hear these things from a stranger telling you, you know, you respond this way, you respond. You're definitely not going to listen to that because you're believing that they're not telling you the truth. But the people that are significant to you, that you trust, whether they are the child or the spouse or whatever, those people that you trust, even though you're not looking, you may be more willing to hear it, maybe not quite ready to accept it till you're willing to accept it.
That for sure.
I think it's about trust.
For sure. And I think part of today's challenges in the world in general, and the idea that, you know, people who we used to trust now hold ideas that are anathema to us, positions politically and whatnot. We ask ourselves, how can we trust them? It used to be that people came to the synagogue to be challenged, to get rebuked in terms of their behavior. Now, if the rabbi says something that they don't agree with, that, you know, that doesn't fall into their box of how they want, they just get up and leave the synagogue and go look for a rabbi that's going to just say to them everything they want to hear, right? Nobody wants to be rebuked anymore. Nobody wants to be told, wait a minute, there's another way to think about that, because then they'll just say, no, I'm just going to go listen to the people who agree with everything that I say, so I don't have to worry anymore. That's unfortunately where we've gotten to in our society. And so I think, Carrie, what you said is really profoundly true. George, Maxine.
Yeah. That Ad Deroche. Let me give you something that happened to me. When I was starting college in 1958, I was on a subway and I found a purse. Opened it up, there was about $150 and a bank book, you know, some Jewish woman from Brooklyn, you know, there's like $8 left in the account. Now in those days, you know, a guy wasn't carrying a purse. You know, I wasn't going to turn it into the subway personnel because, you know, who knows? So I carried the purse into my dorm room. You know, I called my dad. I was going to return it. He says, "Don't take any reward." You know, but I called this woman. She'd have no idea who I was. You know, it was found on a subway, and there was some ID that I could, you know, get, and called her, and she came, you know, to pick it up, and I don't know, she gave me some kind of a tip. You know, I would insult her if I didn't take it. You know, she was so, you know, emotional about it. But here. I didn't wait for somebody to inquire. You know, I could find that person.
Well, so that exactly, George, that's the whole point of what Reb Nachman is saying, that tzaddik is the one who seeks out those who are lost and don't realize they're lost. And you want to be able to find those kind of tzaddikim to say, hey, I'm lost. I don't even realize I'm lost. So, you know, be my teacher.
We weren't on that lofty of a level, you know, we were just earning money. We weren't thinking, you know, all this philosophical stuff.
Who was it? Lauren? Yeah.
Well, you know, sometimes too, you have to be very careful who you do trust and, you know, and what groups you get involved in, because that's how cults come about and that's how people get carried away in all kinds of things in the name of religion. I mean, I think the sisterhood read a book I forgot the name of the book, but she was in Israel. Carrie, do you remember the name of the book where it was Devil in Jerusalem or something, where they were in this religious cult where the rabbi was telling them to do all sorts of terrible things. And they just went along with it because it was the
You're
rabbi.
right, Lauren. When people are lost, it's very easy for those people who are lost to be manipulated.
Yes.
And you're right.
And then when you realize that they didn't have your best interest at heart, that the hurt is so much greater, and you have to climb out of that sometimes. And you trusted them and you listened to them and you thought they were knowledgeable, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to climb back out of it.
You are right. Maxine, I think you had your hand up before.
I did. Thank you. I just want to say my sister has this saying that she says to the kids or to anybody, including each other. She says that, do you just want me to listen and not respond, or do you want me to give you an answer? I can just listen and not say anything and just hear what you have to say, or I can give you a response. Which do you want me to do? And she does that all the time.
Yeah, that's a very wise way of being in relationship. That's smart, because people oftentimes are not ready to be open to what the tzaddik has to offer.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the couple minutes that we have left, just two passages that I think are powerful. No, actually, we don't need that. Let's do this one. Why would the Torah in saying we have to wait for the owner to come and demand it? Actually, why would the Torah say is probably really the way that should be. Instead, the Talmud rewrites the situation completely. Drosh here does not refer to the owner claiming the object, but rather to the person watching the object. Dar Shehu scrutinize the claimant to determine whether or not they are being deceitful. Only when you've determined that the claimant is being truthful should you return the item. We have to be honest. The tzaddik will know and will be able to help us to know whether we're really being truthful. Many things might prevent us from being fully honest with ourselves and or the tzaddik. Ultimately, we cannot recover the lost part. We cannot become whole until we are willing to be able to see clearly and speak truthfully. Then and only then is the tzaddik able to return to us that aspect of ourselves we lost so long ago. I just find that to be...
Share your screen because we didn't...
Oh, darn it. I'm sorry. Thank you, Paul. I apologize for that. Okay, so it was these two paragraphs that I just read here. Go ahead, take a minute and read them.
It's fuzzy, Rabbi.
It is?
Yeah.
Huh.
Item.
The gist of it is we cannot recover the lost part. We cannot become whole until we are willing to be able to see clearly and speak truthfully. I just think that as we approach the High Holy Days, right, and we're trying to rediscover ourselves, the first step is being able to recognize our brokenness, and in our brokenness, try to speak the truth to that brokenness, and then be able to share that brokenness with somebody that we can trust, somebody that we can be vulnerable with, somebody who can then help us, guide us to be able to return. That's the process of tshuva, to admit we're broken, to turn to somebody and say, I'm broken, help me, repair myself, and find my way back. Whether that's another person or whether that's God, right? That's the work of this time period that we're in. So hopefully we will all find that which is lost, seek those individuals in our life who will help us to bring back what we have lost and help us seek the truth in our life and be better human beings because of it. All right, everybody, have a good